I think we should have an open marriage. Those were the exact words my husband used. Not whispered, not apologetic, casual, final. Like he was asking to rearrange furniture instead of dismantling my life. 18 hours later, I was photographed leaving breakfast with the most feared man in the city. I didn't plan it. I didn't even know his name when our eyes first met. But everyone else did. Larry wasn't just powerful, he was untouchable. The kind of man whose influence didn't need explanations, and whose presence alone could end conversations. The kind of man my husband should have never crossed paths with. What started as a betrayal turned into a collision. Because when my husband asked for an open marriage, he thought he was freeing himself. What he actually did was open a door he couldn't close. Larry offered me something simple. Not love, not rescue, clarity. And when I walked through that door, everything changed. This isn't a story about moving on too fast. It's a story about what happens when a woman stops protecting the man who never protected her. Stay with me, because the truth unravels fast, the power shifts publicly, and the ending, it's not what he ever imagined. Welcome to Story Nexus. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, and tell me what city you're listening from. It started the night my husband looked across our marble kitchen island, the penthouse he loved to show off, and told me he wanted freedom. Ellen sat across from her husband at the marble kitchen island, the one imported from Italy, because ordinary had never been his taste. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city behind him, lights glittering like proof of success. This penthouse was his favorite symbol, evidence that he had won, evidence that she had helped him win. Open the marriage? She repeated, her fingers tightening around the mug she'd been holding, now gone cold. He didn't look ashamed. That was the first thing that frightened her. No hesitation, no guilt, just relief. I've been thinking about it for a while, he said calmly. We're still young. People grow, evolve. I don't want us to feel trapped by old ideas. Trapped? Ellen swallowed. She had followed him across cities without complaint, left behind a career she loved because his opportunities mattered more, built her life around his ambition, his schedule, his goals. She had bent herself into something smaller so he could become something bigger. And now, she was the cage. This isn't about freedom, she said, quietly. This is about someone else. He paused, not long enough to deny it. I've already met someone, he admitted. But I don't want a divorce. I still want us. I just want options. Options. The word scraped something raw inside her. He spoke as if marriage were a contract that could be amended without consent, as if loyalty were flexible, as if love were negotiable. So you want to keep me, Ellen said slowly, and explore other women. He nodded, like this was reasonable, progressive, mature. This is modern, he said. People do this. It doesn't mean I love you any less. But he didn't say I love you. She searched his face for something familiar, for the man who once promised she was enough. She found none of him there. I need time, she said, her voice thinner than she meant it to be. Take the night, he replied, already standing, already done. But I'm being honest with you, Ellen. I'm doing this either way. The only question is whether you're coming with me or staying behind. Then he walked out of the kitchen, leaving his untouched glass of water behind, like evidence of a crime that hadn't yet been reported. Ellen Ellen sat there long after the city lights dimmed, replaying every moment of their marriage with new eyes. Every late night, every unexplained absence, every time she had convinced herself she was imagining the distance. By the time she went to bed, the other side was empty. He had chosen the guest room without discussion. She lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to a home that no longer felt like hers. Somewhere between midnight and morning, the truth settled in with devastating clarity. The marriage hadn't ended tonight. It had ended long before the conversation. She was just the last one to know. Morning came without mercy. Ellen woke to pale sunlight creeping across the bedroom ceiling and the unmistakable silence of a space no longer shared. For a moment, she hoped the night before had been a misunderstanding, a poorly delivered joke, a conversation that could still be salvaged. Then she heard him in the kitchen. He moved easily, humming under his breath, opening cabinets like nothing had shifted. When Ellen stepped into the doorway, he glanced at her and smiled. Small, relieved, almost grateful. "Coffee?" he asked. She stared at him. He looked lighter, unburdened, as if he'd finally said something he'd been holding back for months. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "Fine," he said. "I think this is good for us, Ellen." Honest. "I feel like a weight's been lifted." That was when she knew. He had already grieved the marriage, already detached. The conversation hadn't broken him. It had freed him. While he showered, Ellen wandered the penthouse that had once felt like a shared dream. Now it felt staged, like a display home she was walking through for the last time. On the counter, his phone lit up with a notification. She hadn't planned to look. She didn't need to. A name she didn't recognize. A heart emoji. "Can't wait to see you later." Her chest tightened, but the pain was dull now, distant, as if her body had decided it couldn't afford to feel everything at once. She noticed the other signs then. The dry-cleaned suits picked up on days he'd claimed to work late. Calendar gaps that didn't align. A second toothbrush tucked carelessly in the guest bathroom drawer. It wasn't new. She was just late. Ellen returned to the bedroom and opened the closet. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She pulled one suitcase from the corner and began filling it with only what felt like hers. Clothes she'd bought herself, jewelry gifted by friends, not apologies, her passport, her laptop. When she finished, the room looked untouched, as if she'd never belonged there at all. He watched from the doorway as she zipped the suitcase closed. "You're really leaving?" he asked, more surprised than hurt. "I thought that was the point," she replied calmly. "This doesn't have to be dramatic," he said. "We can talk later." But Ellen was already done talking. She walked to the kitchen island one last time and placed the penthouse keys at the center, where his success always demanded attention. "No need to call," she said. "You've already moved on." He didn't stop her. Outside, the sky had darkened without warning. Rain fell in heavy sheets, soaking her hair, her coat, the single suitcase rolling behind her. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she couldn't stay. As Ellen stepped into the street, the ache in her chest didn't deepen. It faded. Heartbreak gave way to something colder, emptier. But emptiness, she would later realize, was not the end. It was the space where something powerful could finally take root. The rain drove Ellen forward until her feet stopped shaking. She didn't remember choosing the lounge, only that it was warm, dim, and quiet in a way that suggested money and secrecy. Dark wood, lined the walls. Low music hummed beneath murmured conversations. Men in tailored suits sat in clusters that felt less like social gatherings and more like negotiations. No one laughed too loudly. No one lingered where they didn't belong. Ellen took a seat at the bar and ordered the first drink she saw on the menu. She wrapped her hands around the glass, grounding herself in the cool bite of it. That was when she felt it, the weight of attention. Not the casual kind, not curiosity. This was deliberate, steady, like someone had marked her the moment she walked in. Ellen lifted her eyes and met his. He sat alone in the far corner, half shadowed, posture relaxed in a way that was anything but. He wore a simple black suit, no visible jewelry, no attempt to impress. He didn't need to. The space around him seemed to hold its breath. Larry. The name surfaced unbidden. Everyone in the city knew it, even if they pretended not to. He wasn't loud power or public power. He was the kind that moved quietly and left permanent changes behind. When Ellen turned back to her drink, she felt him before she heard him approach. "Rough night?" he asked. His voice was calm, unhurried, like a man who never had to rush anything. She glanced at him. Up close, his presence was overwhelming, not because he tried to be, but because he didn't. His eyes were dark, assessing, as if he were reading between the lines she hadn't spoken yet. "That obvious?" she said, the edge of a laugh slipping out. "You don't sit like someone waiting for company," he replied. "You sit like someone who's been betrayed." The word struck clean and precise. Something inside her cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. They talked. Ellen didn't know why she did. Maybe because he wasn't pitying her. Maybe because he didn't interrupt. He listened the way powerful men did. Not to soothe, but to understand. To catalog. She told him about the open marriage. The quiet way her life had been rewritten without her consent. The way love had turned transactional, conditional. When she finished, he was silent for a moment. Then he said, "If you were mine, no one would ever make you feel disposable." The sentence wasn't a flirtation. It was a statement. Ellen's breath caught. That's a dangerous thing to say to a stranger. Larry's mouth curved slightly. "I'm not asking." He met her gaze, unwavering. "I'm offering." She should have walked away. She knew that. Men like him didn't make casual offers. They changed trajectories. "What kind of man makes offers like that?" she asked. "The kind who keeps them." Larry reached into his jacket, not for a card, not for money. He simply stood. "Come with me," he said. "Or don't. Either way, your husband has already lost you." He paused, then added softly, "The question is whether you want to be replaced or reborn." Ellen watched him walk back into the shadows, her pulse loud in her ears. For the first time that night, she felt something stir beneath the emptiness, temptation, and the terrifying sense that saying yes would change everything. Ellen woke to her phone vibrating against the hotel nightstand. Missed calls, voicemails, messages stacked on top of one another like demands. Her husband's name filled the screen. She didn't listen to a single one. The silence felt intentional now, protective. Another notification followed. Clean, direct, impossible to ignore. "Larry, breakfast, 9 a.m. Don't say no." She stared at the message longer than necessary. No emojis, no explanations, no softness, just expectation. And, to her surprise, clarity. By 9, Ellen sat across from Larry in a private restaurant overlooking the river. Sunlight poured through tall windows. illuminating the polished confidence in his posture. He looked exactly as he had the night before, unhurried, composed, untouched by doubt. "This isn't romance," Larry said as his coffee arrived. "I don't deal in illusions." Ellen nodded. She appreciated the honesty. "I won't promise you love," he continued. "I won't ask you for anything you don't choose freely. What I will offer is visibility, protection, intention." "And in return?" she asked. "You stand beside me," he said simply. "Publicly." There it was. No games, no emotional bargaining. She exhaled. "I can do that." Larry studied her for a moment, then inclined his head. Agreement accepted. When they stood to leave, he placed a hand at the small of her back. Not possessive, not hesitant. Certain. Outside, cameras caught the moment. The timing was surgical. By noon, discreet blogs had published the photos. By afternoon, group chats buzzed, names were whispered, speculation ignited. The city noticed when Larry chose to be seen. Ellen didn't check her phone again until evening. That was when the pounding started. She opened the hotel door to find her husband standing there, eyes wild, tie undone, control slipping. "What the hell are you doing?" he demanded. "Is this some kind of joke?" Ellen regarded him calmly. The fear on his face was unmistakable now. Real. "You can't be serious," he continued. "Larry, do you have any idea what you've done?" She smiled faintly. Not cruelly, truthfully. "No," she said. "I know exactly what I've done." He stepped closer. "Did you sleep with him?" "No," Ellen replied evenly. "But even if I had, you opened the door. I just walked through it." The words hit harder than any accusation. For the first time since the kitchen island, since the night he dismantled their marriage with 6 casual words, Ellen watched something fracture behind his eyes. Fear, not jealousy, not anger. Fear. Because Larry wasn't a mistake. He wasn't a phase. He was power made visible. As her husband stood there, suddenly small, Ellen understood something with startling clarity. Larry wasn't a rebound. He was a declaration of war. The fallout didn't arrive with explosions or raised voices. It came as absence. Ellen noticed it first, in the way her husband's name stopped appearing in conversations. Invitations that once arrived automatically no longer came. Messages went unanswered. Meetings were postponed indefinitely, then canceled altogether. She hadn't done anything. She didn't need to. Larry never spoke of it unless she asked, and even then, he did so with restraint. They sat one evening on the balcony of her hotel suite, the city stretching beneath them like a map of influence. "The open marriage," Larry said, almost casually, "was never about freedom." Ellen didn't respond. She already suspected the truth. "He promised the other woman stability months ago," Larry continued. "A future, a role, you were insurance. A reputation he could lean on while he transitioned." The words landed without shock this time. Just confirmation. Ellen exhaled slowly. "So, I was the backup plan." "You were the shield," Larry corrected. "Men like him need someone to absorb the consequences of their ambition." Below them, traffic moved like veins of light. Life continuing, indifferent. The dismantling was precise, quiet. A contract disappeared overnight. A long-standing partnership dissolved without explanation. Calls to investors were returned with polite deferrals. Not refusals, just delays. Hope slowly starved. Ellen watched from a distance, untouched by the mechanics of it. No orders, no satisfaction, only understanding. "How are you doing this?" she asked once. Larry didn't smile. "Power doesn't scream," he said. "It removes options." She thought of her husband's face at the hotel door, the first time he realized he was no longer in control. Ellen began to notice changes in herself. She stood straighter, spoke less, but with more weight. When she entered rooms, she no longer shrank or apologized for taking space. She stopped explaining herself to people who hadn't earned the right to understand her. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't vengeful. She was present. One afternoon, her husband called again. This time, she answered. "We need to talk," he said, voice strained. "Things are complicated." Ellen listened, unmoved. "I don't think so," she replied calmly. "I think they're very clear." She ended the call before he could respond. That night, Larry found her standing by the window, city lights reflecting in the glass. "You're changing," he observed. "So are you," she said. "You're letting me see more." He considered that, then nodded. "There's one thing left you should know," Larry said quietly. "One truth that explains everything." Ellen turned to him, pulse steady. "What is it?" Larry met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "Tomorrow," he said. "You deserve to hear it when you're ready." And for the first time since the war began, Ellen felt anticipation, not fear, coil in her chest. Larry chose the place carefully. They stood on the terrace of a private building overlooking the city, far above the noise, where secrets felt lighter once spoken. The wind tugged at Ellen's hair, cool and steady, like a warning and a comfort all at once. "You asked why everything unraveled so quickly," Larry said. "This is why." He didn't soften his voice. He didn't dramatize it. "He knew," Larry continued, "long before he asked for an open marriage." Ellen didn't speak. "He knew he couldn't give you the future he promised, not the stability, not the legacy he spoke about so easily. His failures were already written. He just needed someone else to carry them." Her chest tightened, but she stayed standing. "So he let you believe the silence was yours," Larry went on. "That your patience, your loyalty, your willingness to wait were flaws. He hid behind them, used them." The words slid into place with brutal clarity. Ellen thought of all the times she had swallowed her questions, all the moments she had convinced herself not to push, not to demand, not to seem difficult. She had believed love meant endurance. It hadn't. It meant cover. "I protected him," she said quietly. Larry nodded. "You protected a deception." The shame she had carried for years, heavy, unspoken, corrosive, shifted suddenly. It didn't disappear. It moved. The grief that had hollowed her chest cracked open and gave way to something sharper. Rage. Not wild, not reckless, clean and focused. "I mourned a marriage that never really existed," Ellen said, her voice steady. "I blamed myself for not being enough when he was already gone." She turned to Larry, anger bright in her eyes. "He let me believe I was the problem." Larry held her gaze. Men like him survive by shrinking the women beside them. Ellen exhaled slowly, feeling something loosen inside her. The grief fell away. Not gently, but completely. There was nothing left to mourn. "I don't want revenge," she said after a moment. Larry's brow lifted slightly. Not surprised. Curious. "I want the truth," Ellen continued. "And I want freedom. Real freedom." A faint smile touched Larry's mouth. "Good." He stepped closer, not to claim, not to command, to meet her where she stood. "Power isn't destroying someone," he said. "Power is deciding you will never make yourself small again. Not for love, not for safety, not for anyone. Ellen looked out over the city. The same city that had once felt too big for her now felt manageable, conquerable. She felt taller, lighter. For the first time since the night at the kitchen island, Ellen didn't feel like a woman reacting to betrayal. She felt like a woman choosing her future. And nothing, not her husband, not his lies, not the life she had lost, would ever own her again. The event was everything her husband once worshipped: crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, a guest list curated to remind everyone who mattered and who did not. Industry leaders moved through the room in practiced confidence, laughter measured, alliances quietly reinforced with handshakes and smiles. Ellen arrived beside Larry, not a step behind him, not clinging, not performing, beside him. The shift was immediate. Conversations faltered, heads turned, whispers rippled through the room like a current. People noticed when Larry entered a space, but they noticed even more when he chose to bring someone with him. Ellen felt it then: attention without scrutiny, respect without permission. She was mid-conversation when she heard her name spoken sharply. Ellen? She turned. Her husband stood a few feet away, face tight, eyes burning with desperation, barely contained. People nearby pretended not to listen while listening to everything. "You've destroyed my life," he said, voice low but shaking. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Ellen studied him calmly. The man who once controlled every room now struggled to command even his own breath. "I think you're confused," she replied. "I didn't destroy anything." His jaw clenched. "Everything I built is falling apart. People won't take my calls. Deals are disappearing. You did this." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't step back. "No," Ellen said evenly. "I'm just no longer protecting it." The words landed with quiet finality. For a moment, no one moved. Then Larry stepped forward. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence alone shifted the air. Calm, deliberate, undeniable. He stood beside Ellen, not in front of her, not shielding, supporting. The message was unmistakable. This woman was not alone. A murmur spread through the crowd. Names were exchanged in hushed tones. Calculations recalibrated in real time. Power, once assumed, was being reassigned. Her husband's gaze flicked around the room, searching for allies. There were none. He swallowed, the anger draining from his face, replaced by something smaller, exposed. "This isn't over," he muttered, though the words lacked conviction. Ellen met his eyes one last time. "It is." He left without another word, shoulders stiff, head lowered. No one followed. The space he vacated filled quickly, with conversation, with laughter, with the sound of a room moving on. Ellen remained. People approached her now, not cautiously, not out of curiosity, with respect. As the evening continued, Ellen felt the truth settle fully into her bones. She wasn't reclaiming her place in the room. She was redefining it. The woman who had once stood quietly at the edges, ignored and overlooked, now held the center without effort, and everyone could see it. The event was everything her husband once worshipped: crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, a guest list curated to remind everyone who mattered and who did not. Industry leaders moved through the room in practiced confidence, laughter measured, alliances quietly reinforced with handshakes and smiles. Ellen arrived beside Larry, not a step behind him, not clinging, not performing, beside him. The shift was immediate. Conversations faltered, heads turned. Whispers rippled through the room like a current. People noticed when Larry entered a space, but they noticed even more when he chose to bring someone with him. Ellen felt it then. Attention without scrutiny. Respect without permission. She was mid-conversation when she heard her name spoken sharply. Ellen! She turned. Her husband stood a few feet away, face tight, eyes burning with desperation. Barely contained. People nearby pretended not to listen while listening to everything. "You've destroyed my life," he said, voice low but shaking. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Ellen studied him calmly. The man who once controlled every room now struggled to command even his own breath. "I think you're confused," she replied. "I didn't destroy anything." His jaw clenched. "Everything I built is falling apart. People won't take my calls. Deals are disappearing. You did this." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't step back. "No," Ellen said evenly. "I'm just no longer protecting it." The words landed with quiet finality. For a moment, no one moved. Then Larry stepped forward. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence alone shifted the air, calm, deliberate, undeniable. He stood beside Ellen, not in front of her, not shielding, supporting. The message was unmistakable. This woman was not alone. A murmur spread through the crowd. Names were exchanged in hushed tones, calculations recalibrated in real time. Power, once assumed, was being reassigned. Her husband's gaze flicked around the room, searching for allies. There were none. He swallowed, the anger draining from his face, replaced by something smaller, exposed. "This isn't over," he muttered, though the words lacked conviction. Ellen met his eyes one last time. "It is." He left without another word, shoulders stiff, head lowered. No one followed. The space he vacated filled quickly, with conversation, with laughter, with the sound of a room moving on. Ellen remained. People approached her now, not cautiously, not out of curiosity, with respect. As the evening continued, Ellen felt the truth settle fully into her bones. She wasn't reclaiming her place in the room. She was redefining it. The woman who had once stood quietly at the edges, ignored and overlooked, now held the center without effort. And everyone could see it. The weeks after the event passed without chaos. That surprised Ellen the most. There were no dramatic declarations, no territorial gestures, no sudden demands. Larry didn't flood her days with promises or questions. He simply showed up. When he said he would, how he said he would. Consistency, she realized, was its own kind of intimacy. He checked in without hovering, asked without prying. When disagreements surfaced, he didn't withdraw or dominate. He listened. Not to win, but to understand. Protection came without possession. Strength without shadow. One evening, as they sat across from each other at a quiet restaurant, far from the city's eyes, Ellen caught herself smiling for no reason at all. "This wasn't supposed to be real," she said softly. Larry met her gaze. "Most things worth keeping aren't planned." She didn't argue. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday. Ellen signed them at her kitchen table, sunlight warming the page, her coffee untouched beside her. There were no tears, no shaking hands, just a steady sense of finality. When she handed the documents back to her attorney, she felt lighter than she had in years. Larry didn't celebrate. He didn't comment. He only asked, "How do you feel?" "Free," she replied, surprised by how true it was. Later that night, he poured them both a drink and raised his glass, not in triumph, but acknowledgement. I won't claim you, Larry said quietly. I don't believe in ownership. Ellen studied him. Then what do you believe in? Partnership, he answered. Two people choosing each other without obligation. The choice settled gently inside her, not as pressure, but as permission. She chose him. Not because he was powerful, not because he had defended her, but because with him, she never felt smaller. When they went public, it was deliberate. A single appearance, no spectacle, no statements, just truth standing where it could be seen. The response was swift and irrelevant. For the first time, Ellen didn't measure herself by reactions. She didn't brace for judgment. She didn't anticipate fallout. She trusted herself. As they walked together through the city one evening, Ellen realized something profound. Revenge had sharpened her, but love, real love, had steadied her, and that, she understood now, was the truest form of power. Choosing love without fear, choosing forward, choosing herself. Time changed everything, not because it erased the past, but because it put it in its proper place. A year later, Ellen stood in the sunlight of her own office, glass walls overlooking a city that no longer felt intimidating. The name on the door was hers. The work inside it was hers too. Projects she chose, partnerships she negotiated, decisions made without permission or apology. She was known now, not as someone's wife, not as Larry's shadow, as herself. Larry moved through her life the same way he always had, steady, present, never eclipsing. They stood beside each other at events when it mattered, and apart when it didn't. Power didn't need performance. Love didn't need proof. News of her former husband reached her eventually, as it always did. A collapsed company, a quiet exit, former allies who no longer returned calls. The kind of downfall that didn't make headlines because it no longer mattered. He had become irrelevant. Ellen felt no satisfaction in it, no triumph, only closure. One evening, as she and Larry sat on their terrace watching the city lights ignite below, she found herself smiling at the memory of the woman who had once believed her life ended in a kitchen conversation. It didn't happen in 18 hours, she said, thoughtfully. Larry glanced at her. What didn't? My becoming, she replied. People think it was fast. That I moved on overnight. She shook her head. It happened the moment I stopped begging someone to choose me. Larry raised his glass slightly, not in celebration, but in understanding. Ellen looked out at the city again. The betrayal that once hollowed her had not broken her. It had redirected her toward truth, toward power that didn't need cruelty, toward love that didn't demand sacrifice of self. She had lost a marriage, but gained a life that finally fit. As the night settled around them, Ellen felt nothing but peace, not because she had won against someone else, but because she had chosen herself and never looked back. And if there was one lesson the past had carved into her bones, it was this. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing a man can do is underestimate the woman he thinks he owns.